for this video. So I watched The Karate Kid, the original, and then the 2010 remake, back to back. And I think I've identified why the remake didn't work for me. Because I think it's safe to say that for most people who have seen both movies, for the most part, we prefer the first one. And that's the bulk of what I'll be talking about today. I'm getting real flashbacks of my high school English class. I remember we had to do a compare and contrast essay on a book to film adaptation, and I did Fight Club. So is it any surprise that we're here today? I had a lot of fun with my high school English class. I think that was my best subject. But that's besides the point. First, I want to take a moment to love on The Karate Kid 1984 a little bit, because it might be my new favorite 80s movie. Huge shout out to Dom, who is a long time friend of the channel and sort of put me on to The Karate Kid. And now I can't wait to watch the sequels and Cobra Kai. So in the original, I just thought, first of all, Ralph Macchio, I think is how you say his name, he was so charismatic, and I actually had to go and look up how old he was, because I totally bought that he was a 17-year-old. I mean, he looked like a teenager, but he was acting the part of a 17-year-old so well. Like, his characterization was so grounded, and he had such a brilliant understanding of, I guess, scene work, that from like a meta perspective, he was too 17 to be 17. Turns out he was like 21 or 22 when they shot the movie, so not too far off of the mark. And some of that credit goes to the writing as well. And to that point, I thought that the pacing was excellent. There was no filler, and the set pieces were so fun. The Halloween party just stole my heart. Love Mr. Miyagi, obviously, and they really had me at the beginning because Daniel kept referring to him as Mr. Miyagi. And I was like, oh, pop culture had me fooled. I've been saying Miyagi this whole time. Turns out it is Miyagi. but Pat Morita, Noriyuki Morita played that stoic, sort of goofy but stoic mentor perfectly. Kind of reminds me of my dad. And I did not expect to see Elizabeth Shue, because nowadays I associate her with The Boys. She played Madeline Sitwell, but she looks exactly the same as she did at 20 years old. She was great as well. So, already, the remake had huge shoes to fill, right? But for me, the main sort of problem, I guess, with the remake was aging Daniel down, or Dre in this case. So, I'm assuming that Will and Jada were trying to keep the momentum of Jaden's young career going. He'd done Pursuit of Happiness in 2006, and that was his big sort of, what do they call it at debutante balls? It's like, it's not your introduction into society, but you know what I'm trying to say. And then he did The Day the Earth Stood Still in 2008. So presumably they thought, okay, we'll do The Karate Kid with Jackie Chan. It'll be huge, and we need to do it now. And he's actually, Jaden Smith is playing older, which we don't see often with like child actors, young actors, teens, early 20s. But the movie came out when Jaden was 12. Which means they shot it when he was 12 or 10 or 11, and he looks like a 10 or 11-year-old. And I'll come back to sort of how that affects the story for me of, having a protagonist who's 12 instead of 17 is a huge gap at that age. But just in general, before we get into the story, I had trouble pinning down which audience they were going for with this movie, like which age group they were targeting, because it is really long. It really drags on. It's like almost 2 hours and a half, I think. And it's so melodramatic at times. Like with the 1984 Karate Kid, for example, when Miyagi gives Daniel the sort of menial tasks through the fun and games part of the movie, wax on, wax off is the one that sort of stood the test of time. I actually thought, oh, I'm glad that Daniel isn't immediately whining about this. And it really helps to keep the pace up. And it's actually at the point where I was thinking, like, no, he's just happy to be painting this fence and waxing this car and washing these floors. And that's when he was like, okay, Mr. Miyagi, what is all of this about? But everything in the remake felt like a dramatic slog. And I guess the thing is that with younger kids, you have to spell out emotions a little more for them. Like, you have to show them Dre is sad right now, and this isn't an ideal situation for Dre. But if I was a 10-year-old watching this movie, I'd be like, okay, when do we get to the fun? But then, yeah, the jokes and the set pieces felt like they were aimed at a younger audiences, like a 12 and under audience. Also, I like that the Chinese people talk to each other in, I assume it was Mandarin. My only pet peeve about Shogun, the series, was that the parts that were supposed to be in Portuguese were in English, but the Japanese was in Japanese. So, I think with modern cinema and television, I like it when the proper dialect is being spoken. But back to Karate Kid, the remake, the version that I watched, that was available to stream for me, did not have any subtitles over the Chinese at all. I went to Google it after because I was like, was this meant to be like this? And I saw some people saying like, oh, 70% of the Chinese didn't have subtitles. I'm pretty sure it was 100% for me. And I had the context of the original movie to know exactly what was going on, because those beats are very similar to the original. So I don't know if the thinking was that, a 10-year-old won't want to read subtitles. And if Jaden or if Dre doesn't understand what's going on around him, then we'll put the audience in the same space. But I do think you lose some of the nuance of the movie if you haven't seen the original and if you don't understand what's being said and what's going on. So again, these are choices. You chose to make this a movie for younger kids and set it in China. And to call it the Karate Kid, even though there's no karate in the movie. But then, in the world of the story, I think there are problems with Dre's age, because ultimately this is a coming of age story, but the character is a little too young to hit some of the necessary plot points for a coming of age story. Like, Dre doesn't really have any agency him all the time and he's just along for the ride. Like, even in the little romance story, just as an example. So in the original, Daniel feels like he's not good enough for Allie because they're in different social strata. So it's his decision to sort of take a step back. And that conflict comes from him. But in the 2010 remake, the little girl, I think Mei is her name, or Mei Ying, maybe. She tells him that he's not good for her. And granted, it is because of her parents, but my point is still relevant. And like, a character without agency is a cardinal sin of writing. If your character is not the one pushing the story forward, then you're following the wrong character. And so to have a 12-year-old in this situation, it just doesn't work. Do you see what I'm saying? The fundamental problems with the Karate Kid remake sort of lie in the character's age, where the story just doesn't work anymore. It is also a little bit weird to see Jackie Chan. I forget, is he just Mr. Lee in the movie? We'll keep calling him Jackie Chan. It's a little bit weird to see Jackie Chan beating on a bunch of 12-year-olds. It feels a lot different than Mr. Miyagi beating on the 17-year-olds. Like in the respective scenes early-ish in the movie where they save Daniel and Dre from the bullies. I understand the need for that scene. I understand that Dre needs to see that Jackie Chan can fight. But this man just needed to take Dre out of the situation rather than to keep goading 12-year-olds into fighting him. An adult who ostensibly is a kung fu master. And then, I think I just made a weird sound. The scene immediately after. See, if I'm hesitant to describe what's happening in the scene because of YouTube's guidelines, even if it's completely innocent, maybe you should have considered the optics. I'll put it this way. I'll explain what I mean in terms of the first movie. Daniel had a lot more interactions with Mr. Miyagi before this point in the story. He's older, and crucially, Daniel is wearing all of his clothes when we cut to that scene. I just needed Jackie Chan to bring Dre to his mother or to a doctor in this specific situation. Jackie Chan just seems like an adult that I would not trust with my kid if I had one, or his character in this just bring up the fact that I thought the relationship between Miyagi and Daniel was much more fleshed out and, layered and comfortable and heartwarming than that of Dre and Jackie Chan, that felt more superficial and manufactured. And, again, not to beat a dead horse, but that's probably in part because Daniel, the 17-year-old, has more emotional depth and agency than Dre. I mean, the whole big climactic kick at the end, Daniel learns his crane kick from watching Miyagi on the beach when he's doing the waves balance exercise and Miyagi's up on the little wooden post thing. Dre, when he does his kick, I think he's just emulating some rando who takes far too many risks, if you ask me. Bad example for a kid. But I think I'll just leave it at that. The Karate Kid from 1984 is a solid 8, maybe 9 out of 10 for me. So why risk trying to match something that good with a remake? Money is why. I understand that. And also, with that being said, I will be all over Cobra Kai when I'm done with the sequels to Karate Kid. If you've seen it, let me know in the comments where I should set my expectations for the series. Also, is it worth watching? Because my understanding is that there's Karate Kid, then 2 and 3, and then there's a standalone sequel that's the Karate Kid Forever, or something like that. And I also just read before turning on the camera that there's another Karate Kid movie coming out next year, and it stars Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan, which confirms that everything happened in the same universe. Question mark. I'm looking for confirmation here. But I think where I was going with this is it worth watching? It's Karate Kid Forever. Because I think Mr. Miyagi is in that one, isn't he? With the actual, the original actor. Anyway, that's that for today. Thank you